Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're taking a look at this white, blue and black, or Esper colored Pixie deck as it's known. Some of you may remember this deck from before rotation and before all the ban announcements as one of the top decks in the format. It did lose a few pieces with the ban announcement mostly, as we no longer have access to the Hopeless Nightmare as a 1-mana enchantment to make the opponent lose 2 life and discard a card. We also no longer have access to This Town Ain't Big Enough, which is a way to recur some of our permanents while interacting with the opponent's game plan, and it also gave us some inevitability when paired with Stormchaser's Talent. No longer have those cards, but they did get replaced by some powerful engines from Edge of Eternities as well. Mainly the Cosmogrand Zenith is one of our main finishers, a 3-mana 2/4, saying whenever we cast our second spell each turn, we get to either make a pair of 1/1 tokens or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. So usually we'll start out by making a few 1/1s, and then we can pump up the team to quickly get the game over with. The Zenith also typically a card we only want to play if we can get immediate value, so often on turn 4 we can play it alongside a 1-drop to immediately start making tokens. And then one of those 1-drops is maybe the Lightstall Inquisitor, also from Edge of Eternities, a 2/1 with Vigilance, and when it enters it has a very unique effect. Each opponent exiles a card from their hand. They can still play that card from exile, but it will cost 1 mana more to cast, or if it's a land it enters tapped. So that does offer some meaningful disruption, especially when we can maybe recur the Inquisitor back to our hand, replay it, and get the opponent to exile another card from their hand, which will also diminish their choices once they no longer have a ton of cards to choose from. And then the deck is all about recurring some of our permanents to re-enable enter battlefield abilities, and Pixie is kind of the namesake card of the archetype as a 1-mana 1/1 flyer, but if we return one of our permanents, we get to make a 2/2 flyer instead, and it's also the cheapest way we have of bouncing our own permanents back to hand. And then in a similar fashion, there's the Fear of Isolation as a 2/3 flyer that has to return a permanent as an additional cost. And then the Sun Pearl Kirin, a more recent addition, 2/1 with Flash and Flying, and can also return up to 1 other target non-land permanent. So this one is optional, and because of Flash, it can also maybe save a key threat from removal. And speaking of removal, ideally our removal spells are in the form of artifacts and enchantments that we can pick up again with our other creatures, so we can re-enable those effects. At 1 mana, we've got 2 copies of Grim Bauble, giving a creature -2/-2 when it enters, and then at 2 mana there's both Momentum Breaker, making the opponent sacrifice a creature. If they don't have one, they have to discard a card instead. Can also maybe increase our speed to eventually sacrifice it and gain some life back, but usually we're going to want to pick it back up instead. And then a Nowhere to Run, another solid removal spell that we can pick back up, a slightly bigger version compared to Grim Bauble, but we can also play this one at instant speed, and it can also ignore a ward and hexproof going forward, which is pretty useful if we're up against Sheltered by Ghosts, for instance. And then we've got a few other removal spells to complement those we just mentioned. Tragic Trajectory is a sorcery, so it gives a creature -2/-2 unless we enabled Void. So if we returned one of our permanents, now we get to give -10/-10 instead, so we can take care of some larger threats as well, still for just 1 mana. And it's also maybe an instant or sorcery we can return with a level 2 Stormchaser's Talent. This card has still stuck around, even though we have fewer ways to maybe enable prowess compared to the previous versions, and we no longer have This Town Ain't Big Enough to combo with it. It's still pretty decent as just a way to make an otter token, can pick up the enchantments, replay it, triggering prowess in the process, and then on level 2 can maybe get back a trajectory, or Stock Up, which is another curve topper here to help us find more action, so we can keep double spelling turn after turn, find more interaction where necessary, and then eventually get it back with a Stormchaser's Talent if the game drags out. And then we also have 2 copies of the new Cryogen Relic, which draws a card when it enters or when it leaves. So if we pick it back up, we get to draw a card from it leaving the battlefield. If it gets exiled by, let's say, a Star Cage from the opponent, we also get to draw a card, or we can sacrifice it ourselves to put a stun counter on up to 1 target tapped creature, although that one doesn't come up very often. And then the mana base also gets to play with a few of the new shock lands. We have both Godless Shrine and Watery Grave, so those are pretty important to be able to curve out smoothly, and we're complementing those with Starting Town as well, which can make all 3 colors. This deck wants to be playing a 1-drop on turn 1, so Starting Town is a pretty good solution for what we're trying to do, even though it's going to cost us some life. And then the Verge lands also complement the shock lands nicely. 2 basic planes, as white is our primary color. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. our hand's got a reasonable mix of disruption, removal, bounce effects. But yeah, depending on the matchup, this may or may not line up. Opponents on the wide life gain deck includes Starting Town and Authority. So, a couple interesting deck building choices. We start with Inquisitor. So Starting Town most likely just to enable the Channeler to gain flying. We'll see if that's going to be relevant. Double Starting Town, yeah, that's a little painful now. Especially if they want a double 1-drop. So that might slow down a ley line, giving the team +2/+2. Now if they do double 1-drop or Momentum Breaker, it looks a bit worse. Alright, opponent warping Halia. So I'm gonna have to Momentum Breaker the Sanctifier, and then maybe on the following turn Pixie can pick up Momentum Breaker. Now Bauble on Sanctifier is also an option, and then I can play another Inquisitor. Yeah, that seems fine. Maybe Inquisitor first, so they have less information on what to exile. Exiles a Healer's Hawk. And then 2 damage is pretty important. Otherwise they might get to 27 to give the team +2/+2. But at least Momentum Breaker doesn't care about how large their creatures are. Halia lines up pretty well for our Momentum Breaker here. So can play that, and then still maybe Pixie pick up Momentum Breaker for their next creature. Since we have the mana to pay 2 for Momentum Breaker as opposed to needing to go for Grim Bauble. Now Healer's Hawk. So I could offer the trade. Opponent may accept. If not, I can still Momentum Breaker second main, or I could also Kirin pick up Bauble, Bauble the Hawk, save myself 2 damage. I guess that makes sense as well. Sure. Just gotta tap carefully, don't trust the auto tapper. Our opponent is gonna gain 2 here off Authority and Leyline. So would have to be careful if they were closer to 27, because then Hawk might survive the -2/-2. Definitely didn't want to attack into a 1/1 Hawk with our opponent at 25. Because then with state-based actions it would actually survive as a 3/3, potentially. Although I guess it depends how many attackers still connect. Alright, now Pridemates. So they're just kind of feeding it to the Momentum Breaker. Can start by attacking. I don't think there's any flash creatures that can grow Pridemate at instant speed. I would be okay with a trade, because then we have Momentum Breaker for Linden. But yeah, usually when your opponent gives you a choice, you should not take them up on it. So Momentum Breaker, Pridemates, play Talent, which does not have anything to get back at the moment, so hoping for a stock up. Opponent's still at 13, so they could still make a comeback with all the life gain. So definitely don't want to count them out. Pixie was a good top deck. Alright, so I can Pixie pick up Momentum Breaker, play it. The Authority has gained the opponent a decent amount of life, I will say. But it's sometimes hit or miss depending on the matchup. So I would personally see it more as a sideboard card, unless the metagame were to shift drastically. So our opponent's at 4, hopefully we can cross the finish line with an all-out attack. And yeah, that'll do it, as we get to rank up here as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Turn 1 Inquisitor, turn 2 could pick it back up. And let's see what we're up against. Always takes a while to make this early decision, unless they've got a tap land that they can easily exile. But yeah, looks to be a red aggro deck with Manifold Mouse. So in that case, hit you for 2. Just play another Inquisitor. Even though if I go for Kirin this turn, maybe turn 4 it's going to be easier to set up the Cosmogrand, but that's still pretty far off. Alright, now the Sunspine Lynx costs 5. Although it is going to hurt since our mana base is all non-basics. And a first Manifold Mouse we can still attack into. Alright, so can still attack for 4. If I play the Cosmogrand, next turn I can enable it. So I think that's still reasonable here. And at 4 toughness it should be safe. Opponent runs out their 3 mana Manifold. But I don't see them attacking here. Alright, did not draw a spell, but I can still pick up Inquisitor, replay it, and then our attacks look pretty good, although I could also attack for starters, because even if we end up with a +1 counter on each creature, I may as well just attack and offer the trade, because Manifold Mouse is still pretty scary. I'll go for +1 counters. And then I would love to find another self-bounce effect, so we can trigger the Cosmogrand again. Opponent with the 3rd Manifold Mouse in exile. And now a Nova Hellkite can actually finish off our Inquisitor, but it's only here temporarily. Take 4. Could be correct not to play any more lanes out because of the Sunspine Lynx. But now an all-out attack means they have to block. If they double block, we can punish them with nowhere to run. Yeah, that seems fine. And then there's no real reason to play a land out. Although if they play the Lynx, they're also dead on board. So yeah, that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable looking hand. Can make black with Starting Town. Turn 1 talents. So this is more typical of the old school Pixie deck, going talent, Pixie, replay talent. But now we don't have towning big enough to bounce a talent over and over. And there's also fewer enchantments in general, since we no longer have Hopeless Nightmare. So then the 1 mana Enchantress creature also doesn't make the cut anymore. Your opponent's blue-white with Authority, so it might be more of a control deck. So, yeah, I mean, if we play the Zenith, it's possible our opponent has the Dark Age next turn, which exiles all my 1 and 2 mana artifacts and creatures, but then Zenith would still survive. Or I can stock up, which triggers the Otters, and then next turn I can likely go Zenith and enable it. It's maybe better. And then find another stock up and a talent, so we've got a 1-drop for Zenith if needed. And yeah, we're getting in for a healthy amount. Now, of course, Authority does nerf the Zenith quite a bit, but opponent did have this Dark Age. So back on the board, but opponent's gonna gain some life this time around. Still makes sense to go for the tokens here. It is possible our opponent's more of a artifact deck, and then next turn we could see United Battlefronts do some broken things. But I think I still like the tokens in that case. Yeah, we don't have a way to remove the Star Cage, so we'll see. This might be a tougher matchup. Another Star Cage cleans up the tokens, but the Cosmogrand survives at least. Relic is also a good one to play, because if they Star Cage, we get to draw another card. This turn, it's probably still stock up, and then if I find a land, make sure to leave blue mana available. I can still play the Relic at the very least. Alright, so the Verge is fine, and then probably take the Kirin as another way to keep double spelling. Already have talent to get back stock up. A Relic is better in the face of another Star Cage. Kind of feels like they might have another one in hand here. So our opponent's back up to 18. Momentum Breaker can also make them discard, but ideally we keep it to answer some creatures. Opponent's got their own Relic, so yeah, this does look like the artifact deck, but they're failing to hit their land drops. So we've got that going for us. But they probably have United Battlefront in hand if they're struggling to get to 4 mana to cast something more impactful. So Momentum Breaker making them discard is not going to be super impactful. Could keep the Kirin to save the Cosmogrand in case they remove it with a snare. So then I guess I can just level up talent, attack for 4, but then we're not adding on to the pressure. Could also just keep up both Kirin and Nowhere turn to trigger Cosmogrand in the opponent's turn. That's also an option. So a few ways to go about it. Yeah, the problem is I kind of have to be the aggressor because our opponent's late game is just much more powerful. So I kind of want to go for +1 counters this turn. Yeah, maybe it's just Kirin, pick up the Relic, which draws another card. Attack, maybe playing a Momentum Breaker to make them discard. So we can increase our speed as well. Alright. Do you have another Star Cage or land into Battlefront? If they just hit a few synthesizers, we can likely clear a path and still attack for lethal next turn. Assimilation Aegis can get rid of the Cosmogrand. So that's where keeping the Kirin to protect it could have been useful, but yeah, we're still getting in for 7. And then I can level up talent, get back stock up, and cast it. That seems alright. And find another Cosmogrand. Probably another stock up as well. Alright, let's see if they've got a Battlefront this turn. If they hit another Star Cage, they can buy themselves more time. A Repurposing Bay can get a Star Cage. We get to draw a card. Alright, so let's see, you can Cosmogrand, stock up, triggering Cosmogrand, and then keep Kirin to protect it. That looks alright. Opponent has 4 cards in hand, so there's also a world where we try and make them discard every card. But I could only go double Momentum Breaker, Kirin, Momentum Breaker, so they would still have 1 card left, which is going to be their best one. So I think I like the Cosmogrand stock up approach. Even though they gain some life back. And then I'm gonna make sure to leave white mana available. Never trust the auto-tapper. Find another Cosmogrand and another Kirin. Alright. This has been a weird game. Usually you're facing a bunch of construct tokens at this point when up against the artifact deck. Clayfired Bricks gains them some life. Can still play a land and then cast a Battlefront, which I've been hyping up this entire time. But yeah, maybe they don't have it. Just a relic to draw. They can sack that to Repurposing Bay to get a 3-drop. Maybe an answer for the Cosmogrand. Nope, just another Star Cage. So that happens. So if I go for Kirin, next turn play Cosmogrand Kirin, I get 4+1 counters. That should be lethal if it weren't for Authority, of course. I mean, I guess it's still worth it here. Now I can pick up Momentum Breaker over Stormchaser's Talent and maybe work on their hand. Alright, so Cosmogrand. Momentum Breaker you. So probably just go for +1 counters, although opponent is out of Star Cages they can get. So now we maybe want to go wide to set up for next turn. Although they'll gain more life is a problem. Yeah, close call. I think I still go for counters. And then I could even enable the Cosmogrand in the opponent's turn once again by casting both Nowhere to Run and the Kirin, or 2 Kirins. Alright, opponent discarding a Synthesizer, don't see that every day. Now we still have to be careful, because it's possible our opponent can set up a lethal out of nowhere with a Fire Crystal, because they have the Repurposing Bay already. But that's where making tokens, I guess, also doesn't help because of Authority, with our creatures entering tapped. So yeah, I could die here. Cryogen Relic. Can sack to Repurposing Bay to get Synthesizer, but then Fire Crystal's no longer a concern. There's a Synthesizer. That's fine. So they get 1 Repurposing Bay activation, but at this point I don't think it's gonna save them. Unless... yeah, 1 token's not gonna be enough if they get Fire Crystal here. But opponent got a 3-drop. Snare. Goes for Kirin, so we can make the play of Kirin. Pick up Kirin. And then play it, triggering Cosmogrand. And then we've got plenty of answers for a single construct token. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a hand that can bounce Inquisitor a few times, missing blue, and missing an actual removal spell. Because while Inquisitor can slow down the opponent, it doesn't necessarily answer their threats. So I don't think this is quite good enough. This one has a few other issues, but yeah, a 3rd land could still make this work. So then I probably ditch a Fear. And then with Stock Up we're not going to struggle to enable the Cosmogrand. And now Momentum Breaker looks fine. Answer the Elves. Next turn we can either Cosmogrand or Stock Up. Our opponent might be on the green Landfall deck, so we do need to find more removal for creatures for sure. Paw Patch Recruit, so could just be green Stompy. Nowhere to Run, also reasonable answer to the Recruit. So got a couple options. If I play Cosmogrand and then draw an untapped land next turn, I can double spell. Or just going Stock Up gives me a reasonable chance of enabling it. Yeah, I think that's got the highest upside. Because the Recruit's not really a threat by itself, even though it can soak up a momentum breaker. Opponent's got a Warden, so that's a good target for Nowhere to Run. And yeah, we can double spell now, so Nowhere to Run, Fear, pick up Nowhere to Run. I think it's going to be better than Momentum Breaker, given what we've seen so far. So we can attack. And Fear, pick up, and Nowhere to Run. Make some tokens. Next time we can maybe go for +1 counters. So we can expect an Uruboroid to maybe show up. Would be a good one to remove before it gets out of range from a Nowhere to Run. As our opponent runs out another Recruit, aware of the Nowhere to Run, so they maybe don't want to expose their better threats. A Recruit attacks. Possible they have a Pump Spell. I think I can afford to take it and just grow my creature some more first. But yeah, if we want to keep up Nowhere to Run for an Uruboroid, it's going to be a little awkward because then we can't enable the Zenith as well. For now, I can stock up. Finding Pixie. And yeah, it's probably Momentum Breaker. Just need more spells. Pixie picks up Momentum Breaker. Go for +1 counters. And attack. So we're applying a good bit of pressure. So even if they do land on Uruboroids, hopefully we can still manage their team. And yeah, there it is. A 1-3. Goes up to a 2-4 right away, so it survives Nowhere to Run. So this triggers where X is its power. So I could shrink it down in the opponent's turn technically, so it doesn't give as many counters to everyone. But I imagine this is Momentum Breaker, maybe ×2. Could also try Relic, ideally draw land so I can still double spell afterwards. But I do want to pump the team here if possible. So let's start with Momentum Breaker. Opponent sacks their token. And then if I attack all out, they can't really afford to block with Uruboroid, or else I can shrink it down and finish it off. But at the same time, we're also putting +1 counters on the team. So our opponent's between a rock and a hard place. So right now, we just have lethal, so I don't have to do anything. But yeah, I could know where to run if I wanted to. They get some Paw Patch Recruit triggers, but Uruboroid still dies. They can save the Recruit that's blocking the 3-3, but they're still taking 11, so... yeah, good thing we had those early removal spells to slow them down. And then the Zenith was able to take over pretty quickly. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. Our hand seems fine. Colors work out with our Shockland enabling both Verges. And our opponent's on the wide life gain deck. So we need as much removal as we can get our hands on. For now, Talent is our only play. Nowhere to Run can still maybe take out a Pridemate before it grows out of range. It's gonna be another Healer's Hawk. Okay. So I could set up an attack hoping they block to instant speed, trigger prowess with Nowhere to Run. That seems a bit ambitious. Let's just Momentum Breaker. Trigger prowess, attack for 2. And we can get our speed up in the meantime. So they might have some 3 and 4 mana cards in hand if they didn't play a 2-drop or double 1-drop last turn. So we need to be prepared for something big. Opponent passes, so maybe their hand just has Sheltered by Ghosts, which Nowhere to Run can punish. So this might be a good turn for stock up, or I can play the Cosmogrand, hope they go for Sheltered by Ghosts, and then next turn I can maybe remove their creature pretty easily. Yeah, that seems reasonable too. Small chance they have some different removal spells like Get Lost. But I kind of want to see if they have Sheltered by Ghosts that they want to deploy. Right, they did have a Get Lost after all. So now we didn't get any extra tokens, but the maps could still be useful. Another Hawk. And there's the Sheltered by Ghosts. Now if they exile my token, it's gone for good. But yeah, not a disaster. Still at a relatively healthy life total. And yeah, I think this is just a double removal spell turn instead of stock up. Of course, Momentum Breaker, opponent's just gonna sack the 1/1. But there's a chance I want to know where to run something else, depending on what they play. Because at the end of the day, any of our flying creatures can still block or trade for the Healer's Hawk. And we've got plenty of those that we're likely to find with stock up. So if they play Pride Mate, for instance, that might be a better target for Nowhere to Run. Sanctifier is acceptable. Anything else? Opponent moves to attackers. I guess I'll know where to run now. Possible they're going next level and holding a creature like Pride Mate to play second main, but they didn't. Another Nowhere to Run could be useful. And then stock up, leaving Godless Shrine untapped looks good. Finding another Cosmogrand. Do I need 2? That might be a little ambitious. Let's go Cosmogrand and Kirin. So this turn we can know where to run. And then next turn, Zenith into Kirin, pick up another removal spell. Eventually Talon can get back stock up. So I don't hate my spot. Against a life gain deck, you just want as many removal spells as you can get your hands on to break up their synergies. Opponent with another Sheltered by Ghosts. I guess I would maybe exile a token here, so don't need to let that trigger. And yeah, our opponent has already seen enough, but Zenith is going to take over very quickly. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand's not perfect, but I'm still going to try it. A third land gives us double stock up. We've got removal for aggro. So, yeah, Inquisitor versus Trajectory is kind of an interesting decision here. Maybe I do play Inquisitor, and then we can just trade for the Lava Runner, keep Trajectory for scarier creatures, while also slowing the opponent down a little bit. Could also make the argument that holding Inquisitor a little bit longer can maybe snipe a more expensive creature, which they won't be able to necessarily cast then. But maybe Trajectory can answer a Slick Shot, which is pretty scary, and we cannot trade for Inquisitor. So opponent's Mountain will now enter tapped. They can still play 1 mana spell. A Hard Claw. Good target for Trajectory. I'll take this trade. With double stock up, we just want to play a long controlling game if possible. Could also play the Cosmogrand next turn, and then you can maybe block, and on the following turn we can stock up plus Trajectory. Yeah, I mean at 4 toughness it's relatively safe. If they attack I can still just take it, and then we know that they might have a pump spell or a burn spell in hand. If they go double 2 damage burn spell, I guess we get punished. Opponent bolt waves. And now attack, so they must have like a burst lightning in hand that they want to trade for Cosmogrand and the Lava Runner. That's still a trade we could make, honestly. There's no monstrous rage to worry about. If I take it, they're just gonna burst lightning my face, so then I end up taking 6 down to 9. Opponent's got 2 cards in hand. Next turn I can stock up Trajectory one of the Lava Runners, make a couple tokens. Yeah, that's maybe still better. Alright, opponent didn't have anything, so maybe it was a bluff. But yeah, we should be okay here. Stock up. Finding... Could also go for Plains Inquisitor and then play the Inquisitor right now. Yeah, we have another stock up, so I don't need Relic for card draw. Talent, we're pretty far from leveling up. And there's nothing I want to pick up with a Pixie. So this way we don't need to shock ourselves with Godless Shrine. And Inquisitor can also trade for a Lava Runner. Opponent exiled a bulk up, doubling a creature's power. Alright, so they might have some pump spells after all. Bolt Wave down to 10. A Lava Runner's now 2-2. And we can set up some trades. This is kind of assuming they have a Burst Lightning in hand. So I don't have to lose the Zenith, although if I do, how bad is it? The upside of Zenith is that it can help close out the game somewhat quickly by making tokens and pumping the team. If I block this way and they have to burst lightning, we still trade, we stay at a healthier life total, but I only have a pair of 1/1, so then I need to find another win condition, which gives the opponent more time. So that's kind of the crux of the decision. Possible their pump spell can save their creature as well, or they burn a 1/1. But that's fine by me. Alright, opponent's gonna shock Inquisitor. That's fine. So now we don't have anything that we necessarily want to bounce, but we can stock up plus Trajectory, which is still a good use of my mana. Finding Momentum Breaker can eventually gain life as well. And probably go for Fear of Isolation so we can keep double spelling pretty reliably. And now I think I can afford to attack. So I hope they play more creatures out, can answer those repeatedly. Challenger I can trade for. Their opponent's going to hang back, and yeah, they might concede to this Momentum Breaker. I wouldn't blame them. Can play Fear, pick it back up, and that'll do it. Alright, sweet. So we got to see this Esper Pixie deck in action, and yeah, even though the deck has undergone some changes with the bans and the rotation as well, the deck still has a pretty solid game plan of recurring some of your answers and generating threats now with the Cosmogrand as well. So the archetype is far from dead, and it's also a deck with plenty of customization, so there's plenty of ways to build it and plenty of choices to be made in deck building. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.